Snow at Heaven's Edge. Chapter 10. The icy nips of winter were still present, but the storm had disappeared, and the sun hung weakly in the gray sky once more. Ling Wuting and Gao Ming stared at the impassable mountain path. She had expected it, but was disappointed nonetheless. They turned around, having exhausted their search. Neither said a word. "Oh look, there's a tulip!" Wuting exclaimed and knelt to admire its beauty. The bright red color of the bulb contrasted defiantly with its stark white surroundings, and Wuting dug into the snow to review the rest of the flower. "Too bad there's no one to admire its beauty," lamented Ming. The young wife looked up, her face still beaming with delight at the find. If there was a reason for the snow to melt, it would be to see her smile, he thought. "It is a pity, but not a tragedy," she replied. "The surroundings cannot diminish a flower's true nature. Water lotus grows from a muddy pond. Sooner or later, it will rise above its circumstances." A flower's true nature. It will rise above its circumstances. He shelved the thought to mull over later, and asked Wuting, "Do you think you can deal with the kidnappers once you find them?" "Of course," she responded. "If I cannot, Wuai can." "I beseech you to not fault me for saying this, Lady Lin. How can you be so confident without knowing your opponent?" "I know that they are cowards. If they think they can win, they would have challenged my husband outright." "You believe in him because he is your husband?" "No, because he is right. The snow will fall and cover the flower. The clouds will gather and block out the sun. But flower and sun are still there. To me, Wuai is the wind that will reveal the truth." Gao Ming wanted to meet the man, not just see him from afar. He heard the tavern tales and read the many stories about this living legend. Can this man be any different from others he had met? Men want power and riches. He made a study of people like that and vowed to further his knowledge on the matter. The clouds scattered slightly, and a few more rays of light bore down like golden pillars. The proximity to Wuting and the angle of light reflected something that Ming did not notice before. There was a scar on her face. The scar was small but noticeable and stretched from the corner of her left eye across her temple to the top of her earlobe. Its edge was slightly raised and silvery. This imperfection did little to dim her beauty. All who had seen it agreed that it enhanced her exquisiteness and ephemerality, making her otherwise supernatural beauty worldly. Ming felt the impulse to hug and comfort her, and would have done so had she not turned and stared at him. "Oh, this?" she said as she traced the scar with her slender finger. "I had it since I was an infant. Now you think of me as an ugly hag." He looked away without saying another word, but his heart pumped furiously. His only wish was that they were back at Tianya Inn. When he finally turned her away, she had her hand on her wrist, playing with her golden bracelet. The effortless smile on her face made Ming eager to meet her man and test his legendary status. Morning came, and Xiang woke to an aching numbness. The rope still bound her tightly. As her eyes adjusted to the light, she saw a pair of hands reached out for her. She attempted to move away. "It's all right. I'm not going to hurt you. Just some water and biscuits," the man said. Xiang looked at the food and debated for a moment the possibility of poison, but thought it best that she died from that than a slow, painful one. She quaffed the water and ate the biscuits ravenously. Once full-stomached, she wanted to lash out at him and even started to call him a few foul names. The man remained unperturbed, and she calmed, realizing her tirade accomplished nothing. There, he said. "See? You finally listened. I'm truly sympathetic to your plight. You have been taught all the wrong things. It's not your fault. It was mine when I lashed you last night. The real fault lies with those bestial couple who've corrupted your sense of right and wrong. I hope you can change before it's too late." Her arms ached, and she wanted to ask him to untie her, but decided against begging her enemy. She sat stoically while he continued his denunciation of the Lin couple. "You must be curious as to why you are here and as to who I am. My original name is Fan Kai, and I'm an elder in the White Sword sect. You must have heard of them." She had, and she wished over 1,000,000 times during his lecture extolling the virtues of the saint's teachings that some natural or unnatural catastrophe would hit them both and end their lives. Compassion, honor, humility, loyalty, and most of all, love and forgiveness were the highly exalted qualities. According to Fan Kai, these were qualities that her guardians lack. "What do you intend to do?" inquired Li Xiang, who paid careful attention to his every movement. "You are misguided but still young. You can learn anew. I would not mind being your master and guardian, looking after you in the proper manner. As for the other two sinners, they will have to pay for what they have done. I will, however, allow them the opportunity to confess before they die." The man's voice was more chilling than the blizzard. Confess to what? Where was the help this man spoke of when she needed it? Tears of anguish flooded her eyes. She had called out only to have her own voice reverberate back to her. At 6 years old, she learned how real death was, understood the meaning of despair, and tasted bitter suffering. At 6, she swore to return everything to the world. Yet, in front of this man, whose hatred was as great as hers, she felt sick. Her face burned when his hands touched it to wipe away her tears. The injustice of it all. She would rather die than live under his grotesque view of the world. She would rather die than be the instrument of his malicious plans. Li Xiang leaned in closer and bit. The man screamed, but she held on tight until he yanked viciously at her hair, forcing her to scream and release the man's flesh. He pressed his hand against the wound. Blood continued to seep through his fingers. The girl's lips were smeared red, but she was heedless of it. A crooked smile stretched across her face, mocking him for his kindness. Her eyes dared him to kill her. Kneeling beside her, he labored hard with each breath. She could tell he was trying hard to suppress his rage, desperately trying to show her the mercy he had just preached. Watching him was comical, and she could not help but giggle and laugh. The empty walls of the cave echoed with raucous delight. Fan Kai let out a final deep exhale and rose. He was patient, a quality instilled in him from childhood. He waited until she was out of breath, tired from taunting him. Calmly, he picked up the birch that he had used the night before. This time, the walls of the cave fell silent, and only the rhythmic swish of the birch against flesh was audible. Li Xiang gritted her teeth and bit her lips. Even when she fainted, she let out nothing more than a soft groan. Wucheng was completely quiet. The streets were empty. No vendors out selling goods, no coal or firewood peddler making the rounds. The only sound was the occasional whistling of the wind across the empty streets and hollow alleys. "You should come here for a cup of tea." Gao Ming was deep in thought when he heard the voice. Lin Wuting's joyous expression confirmed that it was not a trick of the ears, but indeed real. They rushed into the empty store where the voice had emanated and found Lin Wuai sipping tea at a table. "Have you found her?" she asked. "No, but the kidnapper would come back here." Ming sensed the worry in Lin Wuai's voice, though his countenance remained composed. "Then we should go back to the inn and wait," she replied. "We cannot." A loud piercing scream sounded outside. Wuting and Ming looked toward the door. "That is the reason we cannot return just yet," Lin Wuai said, and took her hands in his. "You did not sleep well. There is a bed inside for you to rest if you wish while I speak with our friend." The young man bowed, having at least gained Lin Wuai's acknowledgement. "I think I'll sit a while," she said, to which her husband simply nodded. His focus was now on the young man, and rightly so. Gao Ming was like a crocodile swimming beneath the still, murky waters of his friendly facade. Lin Wuai motioned for the man to sit. Gao Ming had expected pleasantries, but Wuai asked pointedly, "They are asking for the messenger. Do you know what they are referring to?" "I do not." Lin Wuai stared quietly into his own cup and nodded. Feeling self-conscious, Ming wanted to say something to break the silence. Why did Brother Lin join the rebels? The silence that followed was even longer, and Gao Ming began to think it was a rather presumptuous question, and that he should apologize. "Why would you?" Lin Wuai asked instead of answering. Ming's heart grew heavy. He tried and failed to maintain eye contact, and diverted his attention to his cup of tea. Another scream came faintly in the distance, and he turned toward the door. "Why would you, if you were me?" Lin Wuai clarified with a knowing smile. "Because of injustice," he finally said. "The Mei government is corrupt and decadent. Talent that should be utilized is relegated to subordinate ranks. Promotions are dealt through seniority and nepotism, not merit. Grievances of the populace are not heard, let alone addressed. I'm afraid, even if someone of your abilities were to join them, they still would not know how to use you." Lin Wuai gently patted Gao Ming's hand. Only then did the young man realize how tightly he was holding onto his cup of steaming tea. Then why are you still with the Mei government? You should join the Quangs. As you have? I have joined no one, but merely did what I felt was right. I do not believe this is the order of things, that the strong should prey on the weak, that falsity and hypocrisy are the principles of the day. What we truly want is to live. A piercing scream once again interrupted their conversation. A disgusted expression appeared on Wu Ai's face. They're torturing the man for information. To find the messenger? Asked Routine. Wu Ai nodded. We should go. There's something else. I ran into Ma Xianda and Ma Wuliang outside of the city. Several men, skilled in the killing arts and vicious in their applications, chased the couple. As to their identities or purposes, I do not know. Where are the Ma's now? She asked. In the back room. They had no rest. Lin Wuai recounted his strange encounter with the Ma's pursuers. They only want to kill, he warned. Would they have taken her? Routine inquired. No, Wu Ai answered. The ones who took Xiang left Xiaoyan. This would not be the case if it were them. There was another shriek, but this one came from the back room. A mad Ma Wuliang rushed out, screaming and laughing. Demons! Demons! The Demon King has arrived! The soldiers with their spears did little to halt the advance of the small party. Lin Wuai, his wife, and his companions entered the inn. A few officers grabbed their weapons. Think carefully before you unsheath your blades. Once you do, have no regrets, Wu Ai said. The conviction in his voice persuaded the men to stand down. The sound of shuffling came from above, followed by the creak of the wooden floor. A young girl, her hair ruffled and clothes in disarray despite her best efforts, descended the stairs. Everyone knew what had transpired within the upstairs room, but no one dared say a word. Xiang stole a glance at Gao Ming, but swiftly looked away. The creak reached a crescendo when General Wei appeared. He looked a little surprised by the number of people staring at him. His own eyes scanned the room for threats, and his gaze fell on a scholarly-looking man. Intuition screamed danger, and halted Wei Qingren mid-stride as he was about to approach the man. Is this really the person who slew my men? The legendary swordsman? He probably uses hidden projectiles. The sword is a decoy. He shifted his attention to Gao Ming, who looked as he always did, cowardly. Wei Qingren had always hated the kid who carried an air of self-aggrandizement. Even now, the little bastard looked contemptible, with his clutched fist and bold, daring eyes. He would make the lad pay. Constable Tang, Qingren said, cherishing the surprised, betrayed look on Ming. No need for formalities. You can kowtow later. He laughed as he tugged at his belt. What bothered him now was the calm demeanor of Lin Wuai. Hero Lin, he shouted merrily. Hearing your name cannot compare with meeting in person. I never thought I'll see the fierce lion-head Wei Qingren face to face, Wu Ai said. I must say you compare well with the animal. General Wei, who was stroking the bushy beard, stopped mid-stroke. No one dared address him directly by his name, let alone make such a statement. The silent spectators huddled closer together as they sensed the escalating tension. Ling Ruting removed her outer coat and gently placed it around Xiang's shoulder. Lin Wuai, Lionhead Wei said ferociously. There was little doubt in his mind that the man was the messenger. His rumored departure from the rivers and lakes and the rebellion was just that, a rumor to lead them astray and lower their guard. The man could never have retired. He was too much of a busybody. Why else would he head north to the edge of the world unless it was to inform the invading army? The more Wei Qingren thought, the clearer the picture became. He had called Fan Kai mad when he insisted on heading north to wait for the messenger. All the passes are heavily guarded except this one, Kai said. The rebel army will launch their attack from here, and this is also the most expedient route for a traitor with information to take. He was certain that heaven blessed him that the traitorous Ma's and the messenger were here. Lionhead Wei brushed his flowing beard and smiled. Lin Wuai, there leaves little doubt that you are the one. When I heard about your travels throughout the Middle Empire, including our lands, I knew there was a deeper purpose. Then you should free those men, answered Wu Ai. Ruting noticed the numerous glances between Ming and Xiang. These two are lovers. A loud commotion from the rear drew her attention. Soldiers let the men out. All bore signs of torture. A wave of exasperated gasps rippled through the crowd, but none dared to speak up for the men. Lin Wuting saw Xiaoyan amongst the townsfolk. Her heart lightened with joy. She nearly called out to the girl when Xiaoyan turned her head. Perhaps it was the play of light, the sudden contrast of light and shadow that somehow transformed the poor girl's visage into one more macabre by darkening and elongating her scar to give it the semblance of drooping tar from a tipped cauldron. Despite the general commotion, Wuting heard clearly the slow creaking of the floorboards, reluctant to bear the additional weight of each of the disfigured girl's steps as she approached. Hey, you've made it to the end. If you like it so far, please subscribe and like. This lets me know I'm on the right path. And if you can't wait for the next installment of Snow at Heaven's Edge, then head on over to Amazon and read the story in its entirety for free if you have Kindle Unlimited. Alternatively, you can check out Dreamweaver and Duo on Mount Taiyuan as well. Both of these stories are done and available for free here on YouTube, Spotify, and Audible. If you want to support me, please consider going to my Ko-fi and being a member. Have a great day.